Welcome to Left 4 Dead Hot Takes. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my most unpopular opinions / hot takes about the Left 4 Dead series. This video is not intended to piss you off, and nor is it to create arguments in the comment section down below. This is just for the purpose of sharing my most unpopular opinions about a favorite game of mine, so please, if you do end up having your own hot takes, please share them with me in the comment section down below. Now let's also all be adults about this and not go around trying to insult each other for having a different opinion than ours. Let's not be boomers. See what I did there?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Alright, well, if you're still here after that terrible dad joke, let's get on with some Left 4 Dead hot takes, shall we? If you end up enjoying the video, please drop a like. If you're new, subscribe. And here we go with the video. So my first hot take is that I don't think that enough of the Left 4 Dead game modes get the attention that they deserve. Specifically, more rather, mutations, because if you take a look at all these different-ass game modes, all completely unique to themselves, none of them have anybody playing them. You can go onto this game pretty much at peak hours and queue for a multiplayer game of any single mutation in the entire game, and nobody will be playing it. Mostly people will be playing these three modes. The normal game, which is going to be the single player / multiplayer campaigns, the versus mode, and then survival mode. You might very occasionally see somebody in mutations playing it just because why not? But it's not as much as I would like. The only game mode that is regularly populated in mutations, in my opinion, is Tank Run, because that is the best game mode in mutations. But when only one game mode out of like almost 20 is the only game mode having anybody playing it, that looks bad. Not to say that some game modes in Left 4 Dead are good, some of them are just straight up trash, I will admit that, but even some of the other ones, though, are not that bad, and they get treated like they're the worst thing ever. It's not even just mutations, it's like Scavenger, versus Survival, and Realism 2. All these other game modes, if you try to queue for specifically with randoms, it feels like that they're pretty much dead. And that bugs me because it makes Left 4 Dead feel not as strong as it could be because it doesn't feel as lively. And this game has a stable player base. It's got like almost 20,000 players regularly on it. So why do these game modes not get populated? I don't necessarily know if it's down to personal preference, but I would like to believe it is. And so I encourage anybody that avoids these game modes, why are you avoiding them? Like, can you clarify in the comments for me? Because I really am curious to see if whether or not that it's like a lack of players and that's also why you don't play, or if there's just some underlying belief that I don't know about, because I like a lot of these modes and I just wish people would play them more, to be honest. I think that the running or the escaping based finales and panic events are more enjoyable than the holdout or camping based ones. So for example, this would be things like the Coldstream finale and the Parish finale in comparison to some of the traditional finales, because those finales where you camp, they're fun and all, but I enjoy the idea of trying to seek out the rescue. In my mind, the way I think about it is just being like, oh crap, rescue's not coming, we have to get to the rescue, we need to meet them halfway. And in my opinion, that makes it more intense because you have to fight for it. It's not as fun where you just kind of have to just simply wait around and then just kill a tank or two and then barely walk a few feet and get to the helicopter or something. That's not nearly as fun. It also, for some reason, psychologically feels less intense. I like the idea of having to work towards the rescue, work towards the safe room. Just that little last stretch where it's not guaranteed, for some reason, just gives me that satisfying dopamine hit because I feel like I did something more than if I were just to wait around and hold out. Maybe it's just the drive in me, but I always like to do more and I can't sit still for too long, otherwise I just get extremely bored. Maybe that's just me. I think that the running-based finales are more entertaining, more intense, better skillfully wise. I think if you can be a professional at running to these helicopters and these escape vehicles, it trains you to be an overall better player. So I think it's actually more skillful, to be honest, to get to a running-based finale's objective than it is for a camping one. Maybe that's just a hot take of mine in its own right, but I do think so. So let me know what you guys think about this. I don't think a lot of people are going to agree because I think more people would rather just wait around for the rescue and hold out and treat it like a mini survival mode. But I like the idea of everything being spread across and having to go get to the finale myself. Now, even though, yes, this is a Back 4 Blood hot take, I feel like it is completely applicable to apply Back 4 Blood to the series because the game in itself is considered a hot take amongst the community. Not a lot of people like both games. So if you don't necessarily like Back 4 Blood, I do encourage you to at least stick with me for just this initial part, because I think you'll end up appreciating what I have to say. I end up thinking that the Back 4 Blood survivors are honestly underrated. If you've never had the chance to listen to some of the voice lines and the character development between these survivors, they're surprisingly pretty decent. I actually heard a couple of voice lines from all the characters that made me either chuckle, go that's cool, or I was intrigued enough that I was interested to listen to what they had to say further. Out of all the characters in the game, the 4, in my opinion, that have the best overall voice lines and character development are Holly, Hoffman, Charisse, and then Dan, because all of these characters have my favorite voice lines and also the best interactions with each other, or just by themselves with NPCs. And then finally, I think that after all the years of playing Left 4 Dead 2, to be perfectly honest with you, the more I think about it, the ending of Left 4 Dead 2's campaign, the canonical one that takes place on the Parish, is a letdown. It's not bad, it's not atrocious writing or like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever, but it's just not satisfying. The Left 4 Dead 1 ending was much better in my opinion. If we account for the base game, the DLC, and the comic, if you combine all that together, the story flows and makes perfect sense. The survivors meet at No Mercy, they're all getting to know each other, and they all have one goal in mind: survive. And their goal to survive is to end up getting to the military. Throughout all the campaigns, everything's going wrong, but eventually they end up finally meeting the military in Blood Harvest. Now, this is the base game. Without DLC, that is the technical ending to Left 4 Dead 1. If you guys have seen my prior videos, you will know that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Blood Harvest and the ending for a variety of different reasons, but it's at least decent. It makes sense. But if you also account for both the comic and the Sacrifice campaign, the story goes a little bit further. Reading the Sacrifice comic specifically, you will know that the military is corrupt. The military are trying to essentially experiment on the survivors, they don't have their best intentions in mind, and they're probably going to also end up killing them. This leads to eventually them moving on and giving up on the military idea. Well, at least Bill does, and everyone else follows, and then later on, after Bill canonically sacrifices himself for the betterment of his team in the Sacrifice campaign, the other survivors, Francis, Lewis, and Zoe, all understand what Bill is talking about, and they just decide to end up staying at the bridge. And eventually, via the passing DLC, we will know that Lewis, Francis, and Zoe are all doing just fine, even though technically Bill is dead. So the Left 4 Dead 1 ending is bittersweet, but at the end of the day, Zoe, Francis, and Lewis are all doing okay. Now when it comes to the Left 4 Dead 2 campaign, here's the thing I don't exactly like, is the very last part. Just like the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors, from the very beginning, they end up meeting everybody and they're all having the same goal in mind, which is to survive and get to the military. Sounds exactly like the Left 4 Dead 1 crew. And if we address DLC within the passing campaign, the Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 crews will meet. And there is a piece of dialogue that's said by Ellis specifically where he invites the Left 4 Dead 1 crew to come along with them, but they end up declining. So after the events of both NSenr and the passing, then there's the events of Dark Carnival, Swamp Fever, Hard Rain, and now finally the Parish. Here is my biggest criticism about the Left 4 Dead 2 ending, is the ignoring of the foreshadowing that is heavily obvious to both the player and the survivors. By now, I'm sure a lot of you already know what I'm about to say, but just in case you are a newer fan to Left 4 Dead and don't know much about the story, let me elaborate on this. Several times throughout the Parish campaign, there is hints, massive foreshadowing, alluding to the fact that the military is still corrupt. Now, even though in the passing campaign, the Left 4 Dead 1 crew never necessarily exactly addressed their history with the military in great detail with the Left 4 Dead 2 crew because their interactions were kind of brief. All they just said is that they're kind of just over the military, so they really never got a chance to explain much. So I forgive the Left 4 Dead 2 crew for not picking up on the Left 4 Dead 1 crew, that's fine. But there's just sometimes blatantly obvious things that they just completely ignore. Throughout the Parish campaign, the military is bombing the city, so there's just complete disregard for any human life that is possibly left. And then the second biggest one is that there's dead bodies, body bags, not zombies, but human bodies of people that are littered across the entire map that you can tell were shot and executed. And this is probably most likely done by the military. And the last one, even though this is not necessarily the biggest, but the first two are, is that the radio interactions that they have at the very end with the survivors. I think that the way that the military is talking to the survivors sounds exactly like the way they were trying to interact with the Left 4 Dead 1 crew from the comic book. The only thing that they care about is whether or not the survivors are immune. There's never any point where they sound human at all. They are just talking about a means to an end. And the biggest one of all that gets people is the fact that we don't know if they survived. It's only ever hinted at that there's a 50-50 chance, but I think that with the way that they were hinting it in the Parish campaign, the military hasn't changed since Left 4 Dead 1. I think there's a fair chance, a very likely chance rather, that the Left 4 Dead 2 crew is in serious trouble when they got picked up. They were either going to go through the same exact thing that the Left 4 Dead 1 crew did, or they probably are dead. And that's going to sound like a terrible ending and that no one's going to want to necessarily hear, but we gotta look at the hints that Valve was giving us throughout the entire campaign. I don't know if they're gonna give us the same pleasure of them escaping twice, like how they did with the Left 4 Dead 1 crew. So, unlike the Left 4 Dead 1 ending, which was bittersweet, this one's just bitter. I do not like the fact that, number one, we're on a cliffhanger. Number two, the cliffhanger is going to allude to something probably pretty negative that no one wants to hear, which is most likely that the crew is dead. It just really bugs me because the characters even call attention to it via their voice lines, especially Nick, who has some very valid points and valid suspicions. But because of peer pressure, Nick ends up getting pulled into this, where I feel like Nick honestly would have stayed and not left with the military if he was just by himself or with somebody else. I understand they wanted to be rescued really bad, but the fact that they ignored the red flags staring them right in the face really bugged me. The funniest thing about all this is that since Left 4 Dead's universe is treated essentially like a giant horror movie with the way they have the posters and the loading screens and the quotes and the trailers, this is almost like a stupid horror movie survival decision to do. It's just to ignore every red flag like most survivors do in horror movies. I'm not saying that the survivors are stupid, but this specific decision was just a complete bad call. They should have not gone with the military and trusted Nick. Whew. Well, that is officially it for that little rant. But yeah, guys, that is it for my hot takes for Left 4 Dead. I hope you guys ended up enjoying, and if you did, please consider dropping a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and all that beautiful stuff. If you guys end up having some hot takes of your own, please feel free to share them in the comment section down below with me. If you guys are new here, subscribe. But I hope you guys end up enjoying seeing another YouTube video from the most unique YouTuber they're ever going to see. Thanks for watching, guys. I love all of you, and peace out.
Hey, meme lords. Jesus here. And you better have enjoyed that video there by the eternal god Daddy Ninja. You should probably subscribe too, or the mighty Moab will come for your balls. If you enjoyed the video, you might like it too. And give me the memes. Flash, bang, boom!